Hi, Tim West here with Green Mountain IT Solutions, back with another video. If you are interested in learning more or getting a consultation on today's topic, or you'd like to hire us for something else, my contact information is available in the description below. Today we are going to be talking about cloud storage versus local storage. For my file share for my office, should I use a cloud service like Dropbox, or should I have a local file server? Well, I'm going to make this really easy for you. It's 2020. For 90% of small businesses, get cloud. Use cloud storage. Cloud should be the default in 2020 for a variety of reasons that we're going to discuss here. But really, bottom line, you should only be using a local file server if you have some special needs. So if you're just the typical small office, really look no further. Just go with the cloud solution. So let's dive right in here and talk about a few of our considerations that we might want to make. So the first thing we'll talk about is cost. Cloud storage is actually cheaper. I have the pricing here for a few different cloud storage services. Dropbox, for example, is offering you unlimited storage for $25 per user per month. So that's completely unlimited. There's no limit like it used to be a few years ago. Even their standard plan, 5 terabytes, that's more than most small offices are using. Just for reference, a small office, let's say a law office or an accountant, someone who's heavy on documents that has 5 to 10 users, typically I see less than 1 terabyte or 1,000 gigabytes of data, oftentimes much, much less. Okay, so unless you're someone who's storing photos, videos, that's your business, I wouldn't worry about storage space, okay? Not in this day and age, not in 2020. The other thing to consider is, so you look at this and see, okay, well, it's going to be $25 a month per person. Yeah, that's not exactly cheap, but consider the fact that to get a file server in your office, which is the alternative here, a file server is going to cost $1,000 minimum for the hardware itself, probably more like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for something decent that's appropriate and reliable for an office. The other thing to remember is that this price is including maintenance, security, and everything else that goes along with it. It's predictable. There's no hidden cost here. Versus, I have my file server. It's a couple $1,000 to get it in the office. Then I need to pay someone to update it, to maintain it, to back it up. If there's a problem with the server and it crashes or it needs work, I need to pay an expensive repair bill for that. So really, when we talk about costs in a business, a predictable cost is less pound for pound or dollar for dollar than a surprise cost, if that makes sense. I'd rather know that I'm going to have a storage cost of $100 a month, $200 a month, versus being surprised, oh, I got to buy a new server, it's going to be $3,000. Oh, I needed to have the server's power supply replaced. It costs $500 plus labor, whatever. By the way, I have no affiliation with any of these cloud services. I just showed you Dropbox as an example. Google Drive is also giving you unlimited storage, as is Box, which is another service who I wish they didn't name themselves so similar to Dropbox, but whatever. Okay, so unless you have a ton of data, I'm talking 10 terabytes plus is what I consider a ton of data. Most small businesses, you're not even close to that, believe me. Unless, again, you're a photographer, you're a video production studio, then your needs are a little different. Okay? The second consideration is speed. What's faster, cloud storage or local? Well, local storage can be faster. It's always faster to have something right here versus having to reach out across the internet. However, there's two things. Number one, in this day and age, internet speeds are getting faster and faster. we're starting to see the common availability of a gigabyte speed, which is 1,000 megs a second, gigabit internet, which is just as fast as your local network in your office. The fact is that if you have a gigabit internet, typically that's faster than the actual disks in the servers. In other words, there's no bottleneck on the internet speed. And in the next few years, we're probably going to see speeds getting faster and faster. Gigabit will become even more common and widespread. So if you're making this decision today in 2020, I wouldn't consider the internet speed a limitation, unless, of course, you're in a rural area, which kind of stinks and your options are limited. You have to have a very slow satellite or DSL connection. The other thing that people don't realize is that we can leverage sync in a cloud storage to make sure that our files are quickly accessible. For example, if I am an architect or an engineer, I have a project I'm working on. Well, most people have kind of seen this. If you're using Dropbox or something like this, the files are in the cloud, yes, but they're also synced to your local device. So in other words, the file is already there on your computer. It's going to open up just as fast off your computer as if it were a regular file that you just saved on your desktop or whatever. Only when you make a change to the file is it going to have to resync up with the cloud. So there's really no difference there. The access is just as fast. So really, speed is not a huge limitation in cloud storage in 2020, again, unless there's special circumstances. But in my experience, 95% of small businesses don't worry about this. Your speeds are going to be fine. Here is the big advantage of cloud storage, which is mobility. Okay, especially with everything that's going on this year, working from home has become so important to so many companies. Cloud storage blows local storage out of the water for mobility. It's easy. I have my laptop that has Dropbox on it. I take it home and I got it there. There's no VPN or having to dial in to access the server over at the office across town. No, it just works. It just works. Everybody loves to say that in tech. You can also use mobile devices easily with cloud storage. If you want to get your Dropbox or your Google Drive or your SharePoint Online on your phone, on your tablet, that's all seamless. There's no mojo to do it, and there's no setup costs. If you want to access a local server across town from here, then you're going to be paying an IT person to do that for you. Typically, there's some work involved. It's not as easy. So if you're a highly mobile workforce, you're working from home, you have people who are on the road, cloud is just the way to go. Okay, let's talk about the most important thing in IT, which is backup. Don't forget to back up the cloud. Okay, what does that mean? A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm using Dropbox, I'm using SharePoint Online, my files are up there, my files are safe. They're pretty safe, but don't forget that things can still happen. Someone can accidentally or nefariously delete all your files in your Dropbox, let's say. So what I do for clients, there's a few ways to go about it. You can have just a dedicated computer at your office, a small backup appliance that is syncing your Dropbox and maintaining multiple copies. And that way, in that disaster scenario where everything is deleted, you can still recover because you have a stored copy and extra copies on that local device. Another way is just a cloud-to-cloud backup. So you have Dropbox, right? And you back it up over to Amazon S3 storage, which is another kind of cloud service. And that way it's in two places. If something is accidentally deleted from Dropbox, I can go get it from the backup. So don't forget to back up your cloud stuff just as you would back up your local file server. Now, So there's not too much difference here. A backup is vital in either case. Difference being, it's easier to restore the cloud. If I have my disgruntled employee gets fired, he deletes everything off my Dropbox. Well, that stinks, but I'm going to recover everything from my backup copy, push it back up into Dropbox. Later, within minutes or hours, we're back up and going. If my server crashes or it's a lightning strike at my office takes out the server, whatever, just for example, I have to get a new box. I have to restore not only the files, but the entire operating system. I have to reinstall Windows on that server if I'm using Windows Server. You get the idea. I have to set it up from scratch. So it's quicker to restore a backup in the cloud, which is another big advantage. Security. This is the big misconception. Gotta type this out. Big misconception. Because it's important. This is the biggest misconception of the cloud. I hear this. Truthfully, I hear this more often from other tech people who are sorry, but they're a little more old-fashioned or old school. I'm not saying they're old. I hear this from young people too. But they're kind of old school, or they like to maintain their own servers, which is fine. But they'll say to me, well, are you just going to trust Microsoft or you're going to trust Google to just store your data? Well, number one, most of us already trust Google with our email or Microsoft with our email and other stuff, so you're already trusting them. But besides that, Microsoft, Google, Dropbox, these companies are pouring millions of dollars every year into security. They are maintaining a full-time staff of multiple people specializing just in securing your data and making sure it isn't stolen, it isn't breached, versus some little server sitting at your own office. We can do a solid job of securing that, but we just don't have $1 million in typical small business to put into security and 5 people on my full-time security team. Beyond that, physical security. Microsoft's servers are in a giant data center. They have guards, they have security alarms, they have climate control, they have backup power, so on and so forth. In your office, if someone breaks in and wants to make off with your server, probably easier for them to do that than Microsoft server. So the cloud is more secure, in my professional opinion, and in the professional opinion of the vast majority of IT and security professionals. Availability, I guess, is related to security. This is another one I hear a lot. Well, what if the internet goes down at my office? I'm not going to be able to access my cloud files. Number one, remember this. Because of the sync, the files are already on your device in some cases, so you can still continue to work. Number two, really, when is the last time you had an internet outage at your office? Personally, I have Comcast, and I'm not singing Comcast praises, but I haven't had the internet go down. I think it happens once in the past year, and that was in the evening anyway, so it hardly mattered for daytime business purposes. But most of us are not experiencing internet outages frequently. You're much more likely to have your local file server goes down. It crashes, a disk failure, power supply goes out, the power goes out in the building. I mean, if you have a laptop and you have a mobile hotspot, you can still get to the cloud if the power is out. Not so with a local file server. So the cloud is more available. And of course, you can get to it from anywhere in the world. If the internet is out or the power is out at your main office and you're desperate to get your file, run home where the power's on there and the internet is up. So that's what I'm getting at. Now, I will say, here's where we got to hit on the special circumstances. Am I saying that you should never have a local file server or not use a cloud storage solution? No. There are cases to use local storage. Just realize that the cloud is and should be the default because the advantages are so massive in this day and age. But there are special circumstances. If you have lots of data, as I mentioned, we're talking more than 10 terabytes, let's say, that you're accessing regularly, not just backups and stuff. Let's say 5 to 10 terabytes. That would be an extraordinary amount for a small business, I'll say right off. But if it's not impossible, if you're a photographer, you're in video production, things like this, you might have this much data. In that case, you might get a better price and have a faster work experience with a local file server. That's true. The second case would be just specialty software. Again, the cloud should be your default. If you have a choice of using a cloud file storage, for example, and this is another thing that people don't like to hear and don't like to hear it recommended, but it's just so much easier and cheaper over time to use QuickBooks Online versus using the QuickBooks desktop that's installed on your own computer. Again, people don't like to hear it, and they kind of, they're somewhat afraid, frankly, about it. And my accountant is probably in the next town over, pulling her hair out as I say this, but it's true. That being said, if you are just stuck, and some people are because they need something that's specific to their industry, some industries, again, like design, maybe architecture, engineering, depending, need certain programs that just don't play well with the cloud. Then you're probably stuck. You are going to have local storage of some kind. Now, you can still use cloud as your primary and have local as just for this one application. More and more, we're seeing more applications are playing along with the cloud. So hopefully in a few years, that will be pretty irrelevant. I know I was working with someone just recently researching some cloud options for an engineering firm. And just in the past couple years, AutoCAD, for example, has really upped its game integrating with Dropbox, SharePoint Online, things like that, and it does seem to work pretty well. So that's becoming less and less a consideration. If you have really slow internet, and I'm talking like less than 5 megs per second, with a small office with 5 to 10 users, you are probably going to have kind of a bad time with cloud storage. My recommendation, again, just boost your internet speed if possible. If you're someone who's in a suburban or metro area in 2020 and your speed is this slow, you're holding yourself back in so many ways, I'm sorry to say. If you're using a DSL connection or a satellite connection and you have the option of using, use cable or fiber. So that means Comcast, typically, if you're here in the Burlington area, you've got First Light, which has a fiber offering. If you're in Burlington, you have Burlington Telecom, which has fiber. They're all good. Don't use DSL like, Consolidated Communications is the DSL provider around here. It's just too slow for business use. Forget about the cloud thing. It's too slow for email and web browsing practically in this day and age. But if you're stuck, if you are someone who is in a very rural area, very remote location, and your internet, you don't have these options of Comcast or a fiber connection, and you have to use DSL or satellite, yes, then unfortunately, you are going to have to, you're going to have to look at a local file storage option. Hang in there a few more years. Hopefully, broadband will make it out to you, or 5G internet, which is pretty fast. But just hang in there. The last special circumstance would be just compliance. If you are in a medical field, or you have, if you're medical, you have HIPAA. If you're in if you're the government, obviously, or a government contractor, you might have certain requirements where you need to use local file storage to comply. That's becoming less and less. Dropbox, I don't think, is HIPAA approved, but I believe Microsoft, which is OneDrive and SharePoint Online storage, is HIPAA compliant. So that's becoming less and less a concern. To me, it's kind of absurd. I think that the cloud is way more secure and private than local storage for the reasons I discussed earlier, but there's a chance that you might just have to keep things local for compliance reasons. But all that being said, use the cloud if you have the option. Again, 90% of small businesses out there, I'm going to say, unless you're a photographer, a video editor, possibly, but becoming less and less, possibly a designer or an engineer. But even them, I have clients using the cloud. Unless you're in a specialty field, you should be using clouds for file storage. If you are a lawyer, if you're a retailer, if you're these kind of sort of general office fields with small files, mostly Word documents and stuff like that, use the cloud. It's a no-brainer. There's absolutely no reason to use local file storage unless you're in those special circumstances I mentioned. So use the cloud, use the cloud, use the cloud if you can. Now, if you're not sure whether or not a cloud solution is appropriate for your business, please do get in touch with me. Head on over greenmtnit.com/contact and just reach out to us for a free consultation. I'll give you a word of advice on your storage situation. If you do have special circumstances, things like this, get in touch and I will set you in the right direction. All right, thanks for hanging in there and watching.